Yesterday, the third day of the month of Tammuz, was the 21st yahrzeit of the Lubavitcher Rebbe of blessed memory. And I just want to share a story. There was a young man who was becoming closer to Yiddishkeit. In fact, he had pretty much taken on full observance, except for one issue, which was that he was engaged to a non-Jewish woman. And in fact, the rabbi, the shliach, the Rebbe's emissary, who had been working with this young man, was not even aware of that relationship. And one day, the young man admitted, he said, "There's one thing holding me back in my growth now, and that is that I have a fiancée and she's not Jewish." So the rabbi said, "Let's go to the Rebbe and let's see what he says." So the young man said, "Look, my parents obviously are unhappy with this, and they've had me speak to rabbis. We've done that." The rabbi said, "Let's talk to the Rebbe, let's see if it'll be different." So they went on a Sunday, and the Rebbe would stand for hours and greet visitors, would greet anyone who wanted to meet him. And this young man waited his turn to have his moment, and he came up to the Rebbe, and he spilled his guts, right there, online. He admitted what was going on. And the Rebbe looked at him and said, "I envy you." The young man was shocked. He wasn't expecting that. He wasn't even sure he understood that. The Rebbe said, "You have an opportunity to do something for Hashem that I never had the opportunity to do." You see, this relationship is obviously important to you. You obviously have very strong feelings. And to give it up is a great sacrifice. I envy you because I was never in your position and I was never able to make that sacrifice for Hashem. The young man heard this, it turned around his whole world, just his whole perspective, and he sat in the corner and he wept like a baby for hours. And I think that story, more than just a touching portrait of love and tolerance and respect, is a glimpse into this Hasidic school called Habad. And it goes back 7 generations. It goes back to the Alter Rebbe, Rabbi Shais Taub of Ladi, who codified and systemized a particular approach to the Baal Shem Tov's teachings, Hasidic teachings. And he placed that system in a text known as Tanya. And Tanya, we might call it a user manual for the soul. Tanya is a book. In fact, the Alter Rebbe himself, the author, didn't call it Tanya. We call it Tanya because the first word of the first chapter is Tanya, so it's a Jewish custom to refer to books colloquially by the opening words. But the Alter Rebbe himself called the book Sefer Shel Beinanim, the book of the intermediate, the regular guy. And in this book of the intermediate, the book of the regular guy, the Alter Rebbe talks to us, regular people who are conflicted, who face challenges, who don't always want what we know we should want, or want that which we know we should not want. And in this text, this very short text really, called Tanya, the Alter Rebbe gives us a system how to approach spirituality as flawed and imperfect and conflicted individuals. And it's embracing that conflict that we really see in the Habad approach. It's not just love. It's not just tolerance. It's deeper than that. It's an understanding of the mechanics of the soul. And that the mechanics of the soul are inherently dichotomous. Tanya starts with the premise that there are two souls. The technical terms are the nefesh habamis, the nefesh elokis, that's the animalistic soul, and the godly soul. But what does it really mean? What is the animalistic soul? It is neither good nor evil. It just wants pleasure. It just wants comfort. Really, it just wants survival. That's actually what God wired it to be all about. In fact, I don't even think we should use the term soul as our translation of nefesh. I think a better translation might be a drive. Like when we say, you should love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your nafshecha, with all your soul. What does it mean, your soul? Nafshecha means with your will, with your drive, with your desire. So, for instance, the term in Hebrew, mesiras nefesh, turning over your soul, handing over your soul, surrender of the soul, really means surrendering your drive. Nefesh is a drive. So when you say nefesh habamis, we could translate it literally animal soul, but we could also translate animalistic drive. What does that mean? The selfish drive, the self-preservation drive. It's not evil. When a little baby cries at 3 a.m. to be fed, he's not evil. He's survival focused. Me, because that's animalistic survival. Now, as you grow up and you mature, hopefully when you want a sandwich at 3 a.m., you don't stand up and scream at the top of your lungs. But the desire to do so, the survival mechanism within us, that drive is universal. It's part of the human condition. It's part of the human condition to be animalistic. And in fact, that drive includes within it many things that we wouldn't even necessarily think of as being crass or coarse or base. Because the animalistic drive isn't just about physical pleasure, eating, drinking, sleeping. Anything that is self-centered, anything that is self-actualizing. You know Maslow's pyramid, his hierarchy of needs? And on the bottom you have basic vital needs. You need to breathe, and then there's you need to eat, and then you need shelter. And then ultimately at the very top of the pyramid you have self-actualization. Where's the cutoff point in that pyramid between the animalistic drive and the godly drive? Trick question. The whole pyramid is animalistic, because even the top of it is self-actualization. So the good feeling we get when we do a good deed is also self, is also animalistic, pleasure-seeking. Sounds like we're setting the bar kind of high. Rabbi Weinreb has a lecture. He gave it in Cape Town. I don't know if he's giving it here, but on Abraham Lincoln. And I always like to, there's an Abraham Lincoln quote I like that sort of describes the animal soul or the survival drive pretty well. Abraham Lincoln said, I do good, I feel good. I do bad, I feel bad. That is my religion. Very noble, but it's animalistic nobility. It's about self. On the other hand, we have the nefesh elokis, the godly drive, which maybe we'll just translate it the selfless drive. Because what is its focus and its passion? To become subsumed in the oneness. To lose its separate selfhood. To become one with God. That's why the Kabbalist told the hot dog vendor, can you make me one with everything? You get it? Make me one like a hot dog with all the fixing. Make me one with everything. I want to be one with it. By the way, you know what the hot dog vendor said? He said $2.50. And the Kabbalist said, I've only got a $5. Can you make change? And the hot dog vendor said, change must come from you. He was a very philosophical hot dog vendor. He was a PhD in philosophy, as are many hot dog vendors. I don't know if that's a put down to PhDs in philosophy or to hot dog vendors, but no offense intended. So if you think about it, the animal drive is about self-preservation. Okay, I got to get what I got to get, whether it's basic needs of my body or it's I want aesthetic pleasure, art, music, literature, or it's even a little bit loftier. I want the good feeling of doing kindness, or it's even a higher pursuit, like I want the good feeling of knowing I've done the right thing. Okay, that's all self-centered, animalistic drive, self-preservation. Then you have the godly drive, which is completely selfless. And what does it want to do? Get rid of its selfhood, become one with God. You can understand there's going to be a conflict there. In fact, each one of these drives thinks the other one wants to get us killed. Because by definition, what you define as life, for me, is death. So you can understand the conflict that would arise when there's one body, two souls, and they both want the keys to the car on the same night. When Rivka, when she was pregnant, she didn't understand why it was so painful. They were fighting when she would pass by the Beis Medrash, the house of study of Noah's son and grandson. So Jacob would try to burst forth, in which would pass by a house of idol worship. So Esau would try to burst forth. She didn't understand what was going on. And she went to the prophet at that time, Noah's grandson, and she said, "What's wrong with me?" And he says, "Oh, you're pregnant with twins." And she says, "Oh, then everything's okay." You know what she just found out? She basically found out she's got one boy who's the angel and one boy who's going to be the problem child. And she finds this out. She says, "Oh, thank you. Good. Now I can relax." Why is that good news? Till now, she didn't know what was wrong with this kid. He's totally confused. He's all over the place. She finds out, no. It's not one kid who's confused. It's two different kids, and each one has his agenda. We are pregnant with twins. Sometimes we're confused. We don't understand why our behaviors don't match our emotions, why our values don't match our thoughts. What's wrong with me? Why am I conflicted? Why am I walking contradiction? So the answer is, you're not confused. You're pregnant with twins. You have a selfish drive that wants selfish things, and you have a selfless drive that wants to become one with God. And they're fighting it out, and the battle line is your body. So what I want to do, very, very, very briefly, is try to explain the mechanics of this struggle, this conflict. You know, there's an American comedian who has a one-liner. He says, "When we were kids, they told us that practice makes perfect. And then they told us nobody's perfect, so I stopped practicing." Can perfection be attained? It depends how you define perfection. What if I would tell you guys, listen, Shabbos, I was at Habad, we verbreng the entire Shabbos, I didn't really sleep. Then last night I got home, I had to catch up on my learning, and I realized it's summer in Pittsburgh, my wife is not done with Shabbos until 4 a.m. over here. Maybe I'll stay up, I'll give her a call. Then I realized I'm going to get about 20 minutes of sleep before I come to the Indaba. But you know, adrenaline will kick in and I'll be able to teach, not a problem. Okay, but here's what I want to do. After the Indaba, what I'd like to do tonight, maybe around 11 p.m., let's make a road trip. I'm driving. I haven't really slept in 2 days. But let's go to Cape Town. By the way, I've never driven on the right side steering wheel before. And I want to tell you something. I have not fallen asleep at the wheel in years. Who's coming? There are certain things that you expect perfection. You don't want to hear, well, you know, I have a pretty good average of not getting into a car accident. No, I want to hear a guarantee. Where can we focus on perfection? Where can we give a guarantee? We have to understand, we are not monolithic. There are two elements of self. In fact, one is self, the other is self-expression. There's the insides, what's going on inside of me, which is a mess, pregnant with twins. But then there's the outside, which means my behavioral choices. And there, I can pursue perfection. So Judaism is very much behaviorally focused. Perfection, not to be perfect, but to do perfect. I remember when I was a kid, growing up in America, Jimmy Carter was running for president. It was in 1980, he was running for re-election. And I remember even as a kid thinking what he said was very foolish. Somebody asked him about his morality. And he was trying to sound pious, I guess. And he said, well, I must admit, I have lusted in my heart. What does that mean? You lusted in your heart. Can you imagine if you would go up to a Jew on Yom Kippur, you wait outside a shul, you wait for him to come outside, and you ask him, listen, it's Yom Kippur, you're fasting? And the guy looks at you and says, I must admit, I felt hunger in my stomach. Doesn't even mean anything. You felt hunger in your stomach. You felt lust in your heart. Join the human race. Did you eat? No, I didn't eat. Judaism focuses on behaviors, first and foremost. You don't feel it? Okay, do it anyway. And it takes off the whole pressure of the unattainable perfectionism. Like, what's the bother? Why should I even bother until I have total purity of mind and purity of heart? And it says, you're not going to have purity of mind. You're not going to have purity of heart. You're going to be conflicted. You have that animal drive. It's going to come up with some crazy ideas from time to time. That's all right. That's okay. In fact, I envy you. Not I don't envy you. I relate to it. But that's a mitzvah. We say it in Shema every day. Don't go straying after your eyes and your heart. Who performs that mitzvah? Only somebody who sees something and feels something that they'd like to go straying after and withholds and says, I won't. So if you're a pure, what we call in Tanya, a tzaddik, who not only can do perfect, but he can be perfect, perfect purity of mind and heart, so he can't even do that mitzvah, because there's nothing attracting him away from what's wholesome and good. The only one who can do that mitzvah, which is one of the 613, is someone who has the inclination, who has the urge and the impulse. The animal soul wants him to go astray, and he withholds, refrains. Judaism says that's part of serving God. Don't be ashamed of it, embrace it. Again, we have to understand this, the difference between the being and the doing, or what I call self and self-expression, or insides and outsides. Those are all synonymous. Let's go a little bit into depth. Let's talk first about the insides. What's a nefesh, what's a drive composed of? I think we tend to think of a nefesh, a soul, a drive, in very amorphous terms, like some sort of like glowing egg of energy, which is just not correct. A soul has an anatomy as complex as the body which it fills. If you go to a doctor checks you out, takes a bunch of tests, and he comes to a conclusion. He says, you know what, I realized I have a diagnosis for you. There's something wrong with your body. It's not a diagnosis. Tell me which system, which organ, which part. Imagine you go to a soul doctor. You say, I'm confused, I'm mixed up. What's wrong with me? Well, there's something wrong with your soul. Tell me which part. Jackie Mason has this line. He says, the Jewish man and wife are driving in the car, and they're out in the country, and the car breaks down, and the man has to look like he knows what he's talking about. So he looks at his wife and he says, I know it is. I think it's something under the hood. The soul has parts. The soul has an anatomy. Now, I'm not going to get into very specific nitty-gritty detail, but I'll just speak in general. There are two general categories of the soul's anatomy, and that is intellect and emotion. In other words, intellect is the way your brain is wired, or rather how your soul's brain is wired. Its perceptions, its unique way of looking at the world, which makes you unique. The way that you read stimuli and interpret it. So the way your mind works. So a soul is a set of cognitive faculties. We call them chokhmah bina das, or collectively they're called seichel. But these faculties of perception, of reading information, interpreting information, that's all part of who you are. It's how you're wired, just who you are. The other part of who you are is the midos, the emotions, which means the feelings you get based on what you think you've seen. And in Tanya, these two categories of who you are actually called parents and children. It's very important information. Who are the parents and who are the children? The intellectual faculties are called the parents. The emotional faculties are called the children. Why is that? Because the way you perceive reality will lead to the way you feel about it. Now, why is that important information? We're not going to get to it right away, but just table this idea. At first, we're only going to talk about focusing on behavior. But later on, this is called foreshadowing. Later on, we'll talk about focusing on your insides, on your emotions as well. If you want to change your emotions, you have to know where they come from. So if you understand that intellect are called the parents and emotions are called the children, if you want to change your emotions, you want to feel new feelings, give birth to new feelings, where do you have to go? Where do emotions come from? From intellect. That's an important piece of information. Table that for a minute, we'll get back to it. So I have my insides. That means my unique way of looking at reality, my unique way of emotionally reacting to those perceptions. And then don't forget, I have two sets of both of those. Because I have the animalistic drive and the totally selfless, altruistic, godly drive. So I have an animalistic set of perceptions of looking at reality, and an animalistic set of emotions, how I emotionally react to those perceptions. And then I have the godly or selfless set of perceptions and a godly and selfless set of emotional reactions. And that's who I am. Now let's talk about what I do. What I do is behavior. And in Tanya, we call them clothing. We call them levushay hanafesh, garments of the soul. Why are behaviors called garments? Well, one thing is because it's not who you are, it's just the clothes you're wearing. It's just temporary. So for instance, when you're engaged in a good behavior, it keeps you busy, keeps you out of trouble for the moment. But once you're done, you got to get involved in something else. The same thing, when you're wearing a snazzy outfit, you look good. But then if you say, oh, you know what, I want to hang this up in the closet, I don't want to wear it out, and I'm going to put on my grubby clothes. Now you're not wearing the same outfit anymore. It doesn't have a lingering effect. Nobody can tell that you were dressed up an hour ago. Nobody can tell you were doing a good deed an hour ago. So Tanya says the first thing we want to do is accept the fact that who you are is fraught with conflict. Let's focus on putting on the right clothes. And there are three garments: thought, speech, and action. Those are three modes of expression. What you do, what you say, what you think. Now, I know what people are going to say, which is, I get you when you say that action is a behavior. I get you when you say that speech is a behavior. How is thought a behavior? And we have to distinguish between thought, which is a behavior, and what we were talking about before, the capacity of the intellect, your mind. Those are two different things. Thought is a behavior. Your mind is the capacity for intellect. But those are two different things. Let me ask you, do me a favor. Think in your mind right now the times tables. Do any set that you want. 7 times 6 is 42. If it is, I hope it is. 7 times 7 is 49. Whatever. You doing it? Okay. It's interesting, first of all, let me point out, that you were comfortable with the fact that I asked you, are you doing it? But nobody got up, nobody moved around. It was a completely mental exercise, but you were okay with me saying, are you doing it, as if it were an action? Because thought is a behavior, albeit a behavior that takes place in our own head. It's a process. It's a beginning, a middle, and end. And although we can't shut off thought, we can choose to replace a thought with another. We don't stop thinking, but we can choose another thought. Just like when you're about to do something, you can stop and not act. Just like when you're about to say something, you can stop and not say it. So too, thought, you might not be able to stop thinking, but you can stop the thought and replace it with another. And this is a very important idea when we're talking about pursuing behavioral perfection, about wearing the right clothing, choosing the right garments, and embracing and accepting that simultaneously you will be conflicted on the inside. Because you have to understand that your mind, at least the intellect of the animal soul, is wired to think selfishly. That's not stopping anytime soon. But that doesn't mean that we have to give a vehicle to all of those ideas and turn them into thoughts. I was in New York once. I saw somebody had a driveway on a main street. I guess he got tired of people parking him in, so he put up a sign by his driveway that said, "Don't even think of parking here." I thought to myself, what a ridiculous request. I just did it. Don't think of an elephant on roller skates. You lose. Don't think of parking here. I wasn't thinking of parking, and then I read this sign that talked about parking. I just imagined it. So what should he have said? First of all, he has no right to tell me what to think of, but let's put that aside. That's a little grudge I have, but let's put that aside. Just logically, it's a silly request, because when you read it, you think of it. What should have he said? Don't even think about parking here. There's a difference of thinking of and thinking about. You know what thinking about would be? Thinking about would be, I roll up to the driveway. I don't park in it, God forbid, that's a man's driveway. I just roll up next to it, and I look at it. And I imagine myself parked there. And I fantasize. I get out of the car, I go to the store, I buy my stuff, come back, put my bags away in the trunk, I lock it up, and I say, you know what, this spot is so good, I can't even give it up. I'm going to go shop some more, go out, come back. And it's all just a fantasy. And after 30 seconds, I'm done with my fantasy, and I say, thanks a lot. I just had fun thinking about parking in your driveway. I didn't do it. I just thought about it. Okay. Realistically, come on, guys. Be adults. You're responsible for that fantasy. You chose that. You can't choose what you think of. You can choose what you think about. Well, I'll ask you another question here. We did the times tables 4 minutes ago. You were thinking times tables 4 minutes ago. Were you thinking times tables 4 hours ago? Did you know the times tables 4 hours ago? So there's a difference between knowing and thinking. Why is this important information for me to know? Because I go around with a set of intellect, selfish, animalistic intellect, that knows all types of things I wish I didn't know. Oh, you never unknow that. Oh, once you see that, oh, you're ruined for life. You know what? That's just who I am. It's not what I do. Not in action, not in speech, not even in thought. And even though I might think of it from time to time, I don't have to think about it. That's my choice. There was once a student of the Mezritcher Maggid. The Maggid was the Baal Shem Tov's successor. The student asked the Maggid, how can I control my stray thoughts? So the Maggid told him, go to Zhitomer and go to my student Reb Zev. He'll teach you how to control your stray thoughts. So this particular student shows up in Zhitomer, and he finds Reb Zev's home. It's Erev Shabbos. It's a Friday afternoon, and inside Reb Zev's home, everything's bustling. And he knocks at the door, and everybody just keeps running around, getting ready for Shabbos, and nobody answers. He knocks a little more, nobody's answering. Getting close to Shabbos, he realizes he has no place to put his stuff. This is it. He has no choice. He goes to shul, and he sleeps in shul for Shabbos, like a vagrant. After Shabbos, Reb Zev invites him to his home, and they have Malava Malka, they make Havdalah. It's very nice, have a deep conversation, it's beautiful. And the guest says to Reb Zev, I don't understand you. Why were you cruel to me? Why did you make me homeless for Shabbos? The Maggid sent me to you. You're supposed to teach me how to control stray thoughts. And Reb Zev says, but that lesson I taught you the moment you arrived. Just because there's a knock at the door doesn't mean I answer it. There's nothing productive in being ashamed of your own animalistic impulses. There's nothing noble about being ashamed of your animalistic impulses. They will knock at the door and say, here's something to think about. You say, no, you can think of it. You can make it pop up into my brain, but I'm not embracing it as a mental activity. I'm not going to think about it. So the Alter Rebbe says, keep your focus on those garments, on those behaviors, your outsides instead of your insides, self-expression instead of self. And be perfect in that area. In that area, you can have perfection. Again, not being perfect, doing perfect. There is such a profile, a personality, who is perfect, who can actually be perfect. And Tanya mentions it. It's called a tzaddik. Tzaddik. And that means that he only has the perceptions and the emotions of the godly soul, the selfless drive. In fact, I should put it more accurately. His selfish drive won over the animalistic drive and converted it into a second godly drive. So he has nothing but purity of mind and heart. It's called a tzaddik. And if you want to do a self-test and find out if you're a tzaddik, I've devised one. Here's what you can do. For 24 hours, whenever you have an impulse or an urge, whatever it is, don't screen it, don't evaluate it, immediately act upon it. And if after 24 hours, nothing comes out but mitzvahs, you're a tzaddik. You might want to go chain yourself to the radiator before you. And the Alter Rebbe calls this ability for impulse control. See, the tzaddik doesn't need impulse control, but regular people, the Beinani, the regular guy, does need impulse control. He calls it hamoyach shalat al alev. It's a term from the Zohar. Moyach shalat al alev is a very simple term. It means the brain rules the heart. The brain rules the heart. And he says, b'toldosa shel adam, innately. Shkach nivra adam, b'teva yitzirosei. This is how a person was created. This is his nature. In other words, the Alter Rebbe makes a point. What I'm telling you right now is not some spiritual attainment. It's just the way human beings are wired. You're not an animal, you're a human being. Just like if you're in the middle of a conversation with somebody and you need to cough, you don't cough in their face. Inhibition is a natural, innate human capacity. Now use it. The brain rules the heart. Innately. That's why people say, I lost control. It's a misnomer. You never lose control. You give up control. We'll talk about that, God willing. Why we feel the strain and the tension, we can't take it anymore, and being good is too painful, and we give up control. Nobody loses control. They give up control. We'll talk about that, God willing, in the little time we have remaining. But the point is like this. If you really lose control, you don't need a rabbi. You don't need moral guidance. You need a neurologist. That'll be like somebody just knocks over the bottle of water. I don't know, I just lost control. Well, that wasn't a poor choice or an exertion of free will. Maybe you have a nervous issue. The Alter Rebbe says the brain rules the heart. That's a natural capacity. I'll tell you where I saw this. I'll tell you where Hashem was my chavrusa, my learning partner. Sometimes, in few times in my life, I've merited that something I studied in a text that God came to me and sort of illustrated it to me in real life. I was sitting in my car. My wife needed to run in to the grocery store to buy a couple of things. So you have to understand, we're in America. So she had been driving. She's sitting here. I was in the passenger seat. I'm sitting here. She says, I'm running in for a minute. Okay, run in. I'm sitting there. I have a little book of Tehillim, being a good boy. I'm saying my Psalms, okay? And out of the corner of my eye, I realize some lady is coming out of the grocery store, and she's holding it looked to be a 5-year-old child by the hand, and she's walking kind of briskly. And she's walking right up to me. It's like right up to my face, like 2 inches away. I'm like, what's going on here? I realize she's not coming up to me. She's parked next to me. I'm in the passenger side of my vehicle. She's going to the driver's side of her vehicle, and it's literally a few inches away. So she opens up the back driver's side door, puts the 5-year-old child in, buckles him up, closes the door. She gets into the front driver's side door. She opens it up. She gets in. She closes the door. And as soon as the car door closes, she turns around. She starts screaming at the kid, "Don't you ever do that! How dare you!" And as she's screaming at the kid, she notices little old me peering over my book. And all of a sudden, that's it. She's done yelling at the kid. Okay. Now let me ask you this question. At what point in this narrative did this woman feel like screaming at the child? Yeah, back in the store, before I even saw her. At what point did she begin screaming at the child? When she thought it was safe. And at what point did she stop? When she saw it wasn't safe. Okay, so the amazing thing here is, what spiritual program, what regimen had this woman used to become such a master of her behavior, to have this brain rules the heart, to control herself with such discipline? What did she do? Nothing. She was born. It's a human capacity. It's human inhibition. But more remarkable than the fact that she was able to inhibit her behavior in the store. That's one level of self-control. But more remarkable is after she was expressing the emotions and they were unfurling and it was the heat of the moment, and the second she saw it's not safe, she was able to cut off that behavioral expression on a dime. Bam, like that, in a microsecond. And that's all just the human capacity for the brain ruling the heart, human impulse control. You don't like it? Do it anyway. You like it, but God doesn't like it? Cut it out. You mean that counts? You can do that? Says the Alter Rebbe, not only you can do that, you kind of have to. Don't worry about becoming so pure, so sensitive, that you actually feel like it. Do it before you feel like it. Control yourself. Now remember, we talked about the problem of not losing control but giving up control. I'm going to go back to that. Can we go back to that? Okay. If you pursue behavioral perfection, that is, don't worry about the conflict raging on the inside, just focus on the outsides. Don't worry about self, worry about self-expression. Don't worry about being, focus on doing. And doing includes action, speech, and even thought. If you focus on that and pursue perfection in that area, will you succeed? There was once a very pious Hasidic Jew who was, people said about him that he was the person that the Alter Rebbe describes in the Tanya. Not the person, but somebody who had actually lived up to what Tanya describes. In other words, that he had perfect thought, speech, and action. That he was a Beinoni. And one time, he was visiting. He was from France, but he came to visit. He was in Montreal. He was visiting family. And he was staying with his relatives. There were two little boys there, who I know. They're both in Florida now. They're both shluchim. But one of the little boys, who was about 6 years old at the time, said, Vetter, bist du a Beinani? Uncle, are you the Beinani? You know, the one that the Alter Rebbe describes in Tanya with the perfect thought, speech, and action? So the uncle didn't say yes or no. He just said, no, du kannst sein a Beinani. You could be a Beinani. So the little boy was kind of confused. The uncle said, go take a Sefer Tehillim, go take a book of Psalms. He said, go start reading Psalms. So he's doing it. A few minutes passed. The uncle says, past 2 minutes, were you doing anything you're not supposed to be doing? He says, no, I'm standing here. Were you saying anything you're not supposed to be saying? He says, no, I'm saying words of Psalms. Were you thinking anything you're not supposed to think? He says, no, I was just thinking, I wonder what you're going to tell me after I'm done saying the Psalms. And the uncle says, fantastic. Now just keep that up for the rest of your life. So does it work? Of course it works. The brain rules over the heart. Control yourself. But let's be realistic now. Let's talk about the truth. When you control yourself and have perfect thought, speech, and action, even though the conflict is raging on the inside, how's that going to make you feel? In other words, let's imagine like this. Here's my insides, here's my outsides. Here is absolutely no inhibition. The insides and the outsides are exactly equal. And imagine like a rubber band between the two, and right now they're slack. And then I decide, you know what? I'll be a little bit better than my comfort zone. That's like probably most people are like that, right? But then let's say you learn Tanya, and you say the Alter Rebbe says, control yourself. Okay, bam. There's no such thing as losing control. I'm only giving up control, and I'm not going to give up control. So even though my insides are down here, I take my outsides, boost them up. Will it work? Of course it'll work. What's happening to that rubber band? It's getting tight. How are you feeling? Not so good, right? That's what we see, by the way, when we decide to do the right thing and do it all the time. And at first the commitment is very strong. What happens after a while? Well, there's a few different possibilities. One is just slow regression to the mean. You know, like every good diet starts in earnest and then just sort of. Or sometimes it snaps. There's too much tension. It snaps. Lose it all. Or sometimes we just go around like this, which is the worst thing, because it's the worst advertisement possible for being a spiritual person, because basically you're miserable and everyone sees it. So what does the Alter Rebbe say to do? I'm uncomfortable. Well, here's how to get comfortable. But I know that trick. I already know how to do that. The Alter Rebbe says, you want to know something? I can't make you like this. Perfect outsides and perfect insides. What do we call that? Tzaddik. Can't make you like that. But what can you do? Over a lifetime, you can become a little more refined on the inside, a little more sensitive on the inside. You can start to actually like what you ought to like and dislike what you ought to dislike. You can change your feelings. You can rewire your brain, rewire your heart. Completely no, it'll never happen. But you can start to catch up. First, control yourself. And that you can do in a second. Then, over a lifetime, change yourself. Interesting. What does the Alter Rebbe call the first tool? Control yourself. He calls it the brain rules the heart. Impulse control. What does the Alter Rebbe call the second tool? Change yourself. The brain rules the heart. You know why? How do you change yourself? Well, who's myself? My insights, who I am. Perceptions, emotions. How do I change emotions? We talked about it. How do I change the way I feel? I got to go to my intellect. Parents are the intellect. The emotions are the children. If I want to feel differently, in other words, if I want to change myself, my insides, who I am, I got to start thinking differently. Remember when I asked you, were you thinking the times tables 21 minutes ago? And you said yes. And now I'm going to ask you, were you thinking the times tables yesterday, the day before? And the answer is no. We mentioned, thank God for that, because what that means is sometimes I can know stuff that would really not be healthy for me to think about, but I don't have to think about it. I can think of it, don't answer the knock at the door, right? Okay. But there's another reason why that idea is very important. Almost the opposite side of the same coin. There's stuff that you know about that can change your life, and you already know it. You already know it. You don't have to find it out. You're not going to hear it from a speaker at Tanya and Daba. You know it already. But it's not changing you because you're not thinking about it. If a little 5-year-old child would come up to you and say, where is God? Hashem is here, Hashem is there, Hashem is truly everywhere. Up, up, down, down, right, left, all around, here, there, everywhere, that's where he can be found. Sounds like a song. All right, that's the right answer. God is everywhere. Beautiful. You know it. You answered the 5-year-old correctly. Did you know it yesterday? Yeah, I knew it yesterday. Did you know it a year ago? Yeah, I knew it a year ago. Were you thinking it yesterday? Were you thinking it a year ago? We carry around information that is life-changing. But that's just knowing it. It's not thinking it. Just like you carry around information from the animal soul's hardwiring, that if we were to think about it, it would make us more crass, more coarse. But as long as we don't think about it, it won't do that to us. So too, we carry around information that is enlightening, that is purifying, but it's not going to have that effect if you don't think about it. Imagine like this, Saturday night, Matzoi Shabbos, you make Havdalah, your teenage daughter decides, that's it, we're going to get restaurant food, we're going to order out. In Pittsburgh, there's 2 restaurants, Milchiks and Fleischiks, that's it if you keep kosher. So your teenage daughter says, she grabs the cell phone, she says, we're taking a vote, it's a democracy, city council meeting at the mall. Okay, pizza or Chinese? Pizza is code word for Milchik, Chinese is code word for Fleischiks. Pizza or Chinese, and you got to vote. And you say, hold on a second, give me a minute. What do you need a minute for? Let's just freeze that second, right there, freeze that second in time. What do you need a minute for? Give me a minute. You need a minute to know what you want? You're that out of touch from your feelings. If you want it, you should know what you want. But the truth is, I do need a minute. Why do I need a minute? You see, I don't need the minute in order to figure out what I want. If I wanted, I would know it. I need the minute in order to want. I don't want anything yet. I know about pizza. I've known about it for years. I know about Chinese food, almost as long. But I haven't been thinking about either of them lately. So I say, give me a minute, 60 seconds. And for 30 seconds, I meditate on pizza. Think about. And for 30 seconds, I meditate on Chinese food. Think about. And after the 60 seconds, then I can say, you know what? I feel like pizza. I knew about pizza for years. I wasn't feeling like it until I thought about it. So, at first, control yourself. Brain rules the heart. But then, after you're done with that, and that takes a second, let's move forward to changing yourself, the lifetime quest of self-perfection. And how do you change yourself? Also, the brain rules the heart. Choose to think about the thoughts that will change the way you feel. Choose to think about the thoughts that will nourish your spirituality. Just want to, so much more to be said. I'm going to finish up here with a story. That sign says, finish. A couple years ago, took a writer's retreat. My wife actually made me do it. For 2.5 years, I was struggling translating the 2nd volume of Tanya. This, by the way, everything we've been talking about is from the 1st volume of Tanya, the 53 chapters. There's a 2nd volume of 12 chapters. The 1st volume is the kind of stuff we've been talking about here, sort of user's manual for the soul, like I said. The second volume is cosmology, the nature of existence, creation, ongoing, something from nothing, kind of deep stuff. So I was working on a translation, on an adaptation of those, on that volume of Tanya, and it took me 2.5 years, and I wasn't halfway through. My wife finally, she sent me away. She said, our son was going to a winter camp in Arizona. So she said, go with our son, with Yisrael. I just spent 10 days in the desert. It was beautiful. I was in Arizona in the desert, no distractions. And in 10 days, I finished the project. I did in 10 days what it took me 2.5 years. So the whole time I was immersed in the oneness of God. You know, deep stuff, the nature of existence. It's all God. Ein oid milvade, there's nothing but Him, that kind of stuff. And the counselors of the camp said, will you talk to the kids? And I said, I'm not in that mode. You know, I'm not a kid guy to begin with, you know. And then, like, I'm very deep in this mystical text, and I'm not really, you know, I'm not the camp counselor type. He said, look, you're staying here, we're putting you up, we're letting you write here, you're sitting in your laptop all day, not talking to anyone. You got to at least try one session with the kids. I said, fine, but you're going to regret it. So I got up there, and it had a room full of kids, this winter camp, and there were about 50 kids there. So I asked them the question that I asked you guys 10 minutes ago. I said, what if, and the ages there were 8, 9, 10, 11. So I asked them, what would you do if your 5-year-old sibling would come up to you and ask you, where is God? And they all said, Hashem is here, Hashem is there, Hashem is truly everywhere, up, down, right, left, all in here, there, everywhere, that's where He can be found. I said, congratulations, you know the right answer. But you know something the Torah tells us, you should know today and you should place it upon your heart. Those are two different actions. Knowing today, good for you. If you ever have a test, if you ever have an exam, you're going to write the right answer, you're going to get credit for it. Place it upon your heart means think about it until you get an emotional response. You know how to do that, right? If you know how to worry, you know how to meditate. You're thinking about something that may never happen. It's totally abstract. And you're getting a visceral response in your kishkis. If you know how to get a resentment, you know how to meditate. You're recalling your recollection of the past. It's not happening now. Why the adrenaline rush? It has no survival advantage. Because your brain is that powerful. You can take thoughts and you can actually get an emotional response. So if you want to change how you feel, you got to go to the right stuff and not just know about it and not just think of it, but run it through the program, think about it. So I asked the boys there, these little kids, I said, you know Hashem is everywhere, good for you. Like the times tables. You were thinking it a minute ago. Were you thinking it an hour ago? No. Okay, you know Hashem is everywhere. Great. Were you thinking it an hour ago? Were you thinking it 2 hours ago? Were you thinking it 3 hours ago? David HaMelech said, Shavisi avayel negdi samid, I've placed the Lord before me at all times. You're supposed to be thinking about God being everywhere all the time. So I said, do it. 30 seconds, think about it. God is everywhere. Let me ask you a question. After this is lunch, right? Okay. If I go a couple minutes late, it's going into your lunch. But if you go running from a class about Tanya to be on time for lunch, it doesn't look good. So if you miss lunch, I'll give you mine. So I asked the kids 30 seconds, think about it. And they did it. And I said, okay, tell me how you felt. Because, great, you know about it. How does it make you feel? God is everywhere. How does it make you feel? So the first kid who raised his hand was sitting right in the front and far left corner. So I said, yes, go ahead. And he said, I felt safe. I said, great, anyone else? And the kid right next to him raised his hand. I said, how did you feel? He says, I felt calm. So actually what happened is the kids thought that they were supposed to go one by one. Because the first two kids were the first two kids. So they went one by one. Every one of these 50 kids said a different emotion. I felt safe. I felt calm. I felt at peace. I felt happy. I felt small. You know, like really deep concepts these kids were saying. And after they were done reporting their emotions, I thought to myself, wow, What if we could bottle these emotions and sell them to the pharmaceutical industry? We'd be billionaires. And you want to know the irony of it? The joke of it? We all have these emotions for free in our own brains. We know the information already. God is everywhere. He's creating the world every second. He is infinite. Everything is where it's supposed to be. He's outside and surrounding all reality. He's inside and permeating all reality. We know this stuff. By the way, if we've forgotten it, you have to learn. This is Johannesburg. This is not a little rinky-dink town. There's plenty of Tanya classes you can go study. So let's do it. 30 seconds. We all know that God is everywhere. Let's think about it. Don't try to force a feeling. Let it happen organically. Let's see how it makes us feel. Want to do it? Okay, I'm doing it. You can do whatever you want. You can think about lunch. I'm going to think about God is everywhere. 30 seconds. Now just keep doing that for the rest of your life.